Mic check, mic check. What you are seeing on the video, right? What you're seeing on the thumbnail and what you're seeing on the title of the video, it is true. This is a free deal analyzing situation. I am not here doing clickbait. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to zoom out because I don't feel like I'm all up on that camera. But really, we got some distance. If you are joining, if you are joining this video, just know that this is a free deal analyzer session. Likely what I'll end up doing is having you drop me an email so that I can underwrite your deal. And if you have any concerns about sharing information, send it in DA. My information is public, so I don't plan on sharing anything. It just doesn't work well for me if I go against your best interests or even my own. So, if you want to get a free deal analysis, stop on by. Um, it's not every day that everybody gets to use a service that is typically thousands of dollars. And so I want to make sure myself that I am available for folks that are interested in participating and doing multifamily. That being said, I'm gonna take one of these. And happy Monday. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Here's what I'll do. Also, I'll take some time to open up a deal that can help for conversation's sake. This isn't something that I've done once, twice. No, this is something that I do. I take the time to look at opportunities that present themselves and I run the numbers. If the numbers make sense, I take the next step. As any other investor should. Make sure that the numbers work. Try not to waste anyone's time. The last thing you want to do is to go and set up tour dates, go and put offers out without looking at the subject, without making sure you tested the deal, without knowing. You want to make sure you're doing your homework. So let's pull up a sample deal. Let's just see what a sample deal would look like. I'll be setting up this sample deal here shortly. Pulling up the deal here shortly. One moment. Before I pull up the deal, here's what I'll do. I'll just talk trash. Talk some real game with you. What does a investor typically look for when they're shopping for a property? They're looking for a deal with a high potential of earnings. How do you find out if the deal is worth entertaining? You look at the numbers on the property. You want to know what's the income that's coming in. You want to know the expenses, considering that you know the area that you're shopping in. You'll typically know what the cap rates are in the area. And then once you have all of those numbers, those factors, you can do your back of the napkin to see if you're going to be wasting your time entertaining a property or not. So once you do that, you'll come up with a figure. That figure then tells you whether or not the broker here is selling you a story or selling you a deal. What am I talking about when I say selling a story or selling a deal? Well, not all properties are an opportunity. Just because you see properties up here doesn't make that worth spending a lot of time on. You see numbers like numbers of units, you'll see a cap rate, you'll see price tag. This is enough information to do the back of the napkin. Well, and it's the fact you have to find your expenses. So let's just use an example here. Let's say you need to get uh, your expenses. Well, on this property, it doesn't show expenses on here. It shows you not enough information. Is that might show. Let's see if this one does. Total expenses are here, but they're hidden. You have to request that. Okay, not bad. Not bad. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see if I can log in without my information being too exposed. Okay. Right now we're looking at a deal that is based in Richmond. Richmond is a 10 cap area. How do I know? It's a dilapidated, um, high turnover. Not a lot of people want to move to Richmond. It's a low demand area and a high crime rate area. And so with all these factors, it comes up with a score that that should reflect the value of the property. Okay. The free version of doing the back of the napkin underwriting is when you take your number of units. So for this property, we have 9 units. You can multiply that number by the rent amount, and we can find our rent amount. If it's not shown on here, we could still get it from like going and doing a comps doing your comps on a neighborhood. And I'll eyeball this one just to make sure we can kind of get the conversation going. It's only one bedroom, one bathroom, and then the other units are two bedroom, one bathroom. My understanding, when you go and look at a Richmond, you're gonna pay at least 1,700 up to $2,000 for a two bedroom. So let's just say that you can get your rent for $2,000. I'm gonna need a calculator. And of course, it's not going to be $20,000, but it's going to be $18,000. And then we take that 18,000, 18K, and multiply that by however many months there are in a year, which is 12. That will give us our total gross income. Now, I still got to get my calculator out. 18K, well, I'll just write it all out by 12 months equals 21, or should I say $216,000. $216,000. And with $216,000, we can take the gross income and multiply or divide that, right, by the expenses. Expenses on a property, you want to make sure that you have as close to 50% as possible. Between 40 and 50% is going to be your sweet spot. We're going to use 50% for this example. So, what would be 50% of 216? That is 108,000. And then we'll take our $108,000 and we'll do our cap rate for the property. I said 10. I'm going to give it an 8 cap. So 0.08. We'll divide 108,000 by 0.08. And this will give us our purchase price. Our purchase price right now shows 1.35, and they're asking for 1,600,000. They're saying that it's a 6 cap. That's the reason why they're giving us this price tag. Now, granted, I did not run the specific rent amount, only because I'm just shooting the shit with you. Second, if you do your comps, you're going to probably find that the numbers are not too far off from what I said. Now, 2000 is what I gave. It could be more, it could be a little less. It's not the best area. You could probably find something for $2,000 in Antioch. You could probably find something for $2,000 Pittsburgh, but you're not going to find this everywhere. $2,000 is like slim pickings out here in California these days. So when you find something like that in a Richmond or in Oakland, you're not far off. So that's where we are. That says an 8 cap. I'm gonna try this number out at 6.5. Like I said, the numbers weren't too far off because at a 0.065 with $108,000 as income, you get $1,661,000. This is your purchase price. That is in alignment with this number, 1,000,006. I got 1,660. They got 1,000,000, 1,600,000. That's not too far off. Now that could mean that their rents are not at the price that I put on there, and that they can perceive escalation of the rents. Um, but that's just based on this back of the napkin underwriting. Now, what is the cap rate? A cap rate can mean one of two things. The cap rate can simply mean what is the rate of return you're going to get from a property if you paid cash for it. So if you spent 1,600,000 on this property that we were looking at, I'm going to pull the property back up so you know that we're looking at the same deal. Um, let's see if I can copy it and put it on this side. If we're going to look at, oh, I didn't pull it up. Hmm. I'll just do the window view. Let's not do that. Let's do this, the window view for this one. Okay. So if we're going to look at this property and say the cap rate is 6.5. This shows 6.17. But if we're going to look at this deal and say that this is a 6.5 cap, you're going to end up spending $1,660,000 out of pocket. You're going to get your cash on cash, or I'm sorry, your cash at the end of the year. Your rate of return is going to be your 6.5% annually. That's if you paid cash. But also, cap rate means something totally different as well through a lens of an investor. Your cap rate can be perceived as desirable or undesirable as far as locations are concerned. The higher the cap you are at, the less attractive the deal is. The lower the cap rate is, the more attractive the deal is. Um, maybe not. Let me not say more attractive, but more desirable. There's more density, more population in the area. Simply meaning that more people are going to be there for you to pick through as a valid tenant. So the deal is more expensive because you have a lot more people to vet. It's a higher population area, and you have more options there. So if you have a smaller cap, you'll have a more expensive property. If you have a higher cap, the less expensive the property becomes. On an average, on a general sense, you're going to see that California is between 5 and 6% on the cap rate. The more dense the population is, the less the cap rate will be. So you're going to be between the 4%, maybe perhaps 3 if you get into the cities of like Danville or some like bigger city like a San Francisco. And then you're gonna get into the higher caps the further away from the populated areas you are, and the more run down the areas are, like a Stockton, where the cap rates are gonna be 10% or somewhere around that percentage. And the property is gonna be less expensive because there's probably gonna be some vacancy. There's probably gonna be some high turnover. All that to conclude that your cap rate can mean two things: the weight, the strength of the deal, or the actual percentage you're going to get back if you paid cash. I don't advise, um, number one, you need your own advisor. But if you're working with me as an investor, the people that I work with, I typically point them to loans. And so I want them to do the BRRRR strategy. I want them to use as much opportunities as they can to make more money than just simply dropping a huge bag and buying the property outright, because it's more money up front. And if you don't leverage the bank, you're not going to be taking advantage of holding your own capital so that way you can make more money leveraging the bank. So, pointing back to this deal that we're looking at, you're only going to learn so much just going back of the napkin. Because let's say that the rents aren't at $2,000. Are you going to assume that they're giving you the transparent numbers? Of course, you can find what the typical expenses are by simply dividing the total income by the number of units. So let's try it that way. If we got 218 divided by 9, divided by which equals this 24 divided by 12, it equals $2,018. So you have $218,000. Divide this number by the number of units. Divide that number by the number of months. And then you should get your monthly expense per unit. Per unit means 20,000 and or sorry, $2,018 per door. At 9 doors, you're going to get $218,000. This is all back of the napkin. It's a lot of assuming that happens without having a calculator. Now, I'm going to pull out the tool. The tool, I'm going to whoop out the tool. The tool's going to show you what it do. I don't got to do anything but plug and play from there. This isn't going to be about the particular deal, okay? This isn't going to be about this specific deal. This is about a different deal, totally different location. We're just going to review it. It's not a particularly great deal. So, this isn't about giving you the best deals available. That's not how this works. It's just about going over what it is and seeing if it's a good fit. So I'm going to share the screen for Deal OG. Okay, we're talking about a property that has 14 doors. They're actually asking for, last time I checked, I think they were asking for 6.3. They're not asking for 5. You can go to the data input and do that though. Let's say that they're asking for 6.3. This is the data input page. This is where you can plug in the metrics on the deal and it should populate on the other side of this deal to make it easier for you to strategically plan what you're going to do next. You have your number of units, the type of units, and then you have your expenses, the asking price, your desired down payment. I'm going to zoom in just in case you guys can't see. And then we go back to deal summary. This is what they're asking for. This is the purchase price on a strategy scenario 4 scenario. It's right here. I'll show you what that screen is about in a moment. This is what it would cost per door if you bought it at this price. This is what an EMD would look like at 1%. This is the down payment at 30%, which is 1.5. That's based on this price tag right here, 5.2. You have an interest rate on the first mortgage. I'll explain this in a moment. Interest only for this 5%. And then we'll scroll down to right here. This shows a 6% cap, which is pretty neat. Gross scheduled income. And then we have expenses. The expenses shows about 30%. But you have a cash on cash averaging. And then you have your first year's performance. Um, your debt coverage is important to consider when it comes to analyzing a deal. Typically, a bank is going to look at your deal and say that 1.25 is the debt coverage desired number. You can get away with having a 1% debt coverage ratio if the deal makes sense and you find it that it has a lot of potential on the opportunity to collect the deal out of whatever debt ratio is existing, go for it. As long as the deal makes sense. Next, we have your gross rent multiplier. There are some people that live by this metric. If this metric doesn't move them, they will not collect the deal at all. Now, I do not advise people to do that. It is important to look at the entire story of a deal before you make any judgments, before you make any moves on collecting a deal. We have member equity. Again, this is what a syndicator is looking at when they are looking at a deal. They want to know what they're going to earn when they are partnering with an investor to create a roadmap of success for that investor. And they're going to also bring in capital. By bringing in more capital, they're going to get a percentage of the deal, and they're typically going to get what's left with the 30% as they are collecting investors and other investors are collecting investors, right? So whoever brings the most money, they'll get the weight of this 30% as their vested interest in the deal. Some people are concerned about what a pref is. Like they want to make sure that they get a certain amount every year. That's a strategy. And some other people focus on the waterfall strategy. I don't, I don't, I'm not moved by one way or the other. I just want to make sure that the deal is performing to your liking. And if it does, it shouldn't matter if you get a pref. It shouldn't matter if you do a waterfall. You're going to be satisfied with the desired outcome at the end of the day. And that's most important to me. Not a pref, not a waterfall structure, but just shooting you straight. There's an asset management fee on here. And then based on this number, you're going to see first year cash flow for members. And then it's going to get higher every year. So let's kind of like look at the scenario. What we're looking at is number 4. I plug in the numbers for this situation. It's a 14 unit property, 30% down, 120. This is 5 years for interest only. This is going to be your repair fee, which most properties you're going to have to put your own repair fee. You're going to have to consult with a construction or investigation of the property, general contractors of sorts to kind of figure out what's the going rate for repairs on the property. Once you kind of come up with those figures, you're going to get your general income, your gross income. And every property has vacancy. Let's just be honest. Some people use 5% as their vacancy. This is a smaller door, like there's 14 units. So you're going to have a higher rate, vacancy rate. So 5 to 7 is typically the number you're going to use. And then you're going to keep your expenses. We also put in here that your rent is going to be uh, right here, 2,500. But our goal is to get to this rent price. Once we achieve this number, we can. It's not gonna flatten. It's gonna continue to go and increase, but you can decide if you want to stay in the deal or not. If you can sell it, sell it. If you can refinance, cash out the investor, and kind of keep it going, go for it. It's kind of hard to look at this screen as it is. It's pretty big screen. So again, we're looking at the offer. We're looking at debt service and how much it's going to cost you, the interest rate that the banks are going to give us, the term in which they're going to give us, 30 years amortized. This tells us what the cap rate is going to be. And then this tells us what the DCR is going to be. And we go from there. There's more to this. You have your profit and loss. It tells you how much the expenses are, what you're going to expect to make over the life of the deal. So you can see the years are going higher and higher. Year 9, year 10. It shows you a sell point. Says what you're going to be making on the sale if you did decide to sell it that at that time. If you bought it for 5 million, you could potentially sell it for 6, 7, or 8 million. Given that, uh, given that, you can decide on how you want to proceed with the deal structure. You have an exit strategy. What you saw on the last page was the sell point at 10 years. This is where they got it from. And then you have a refinance structure if you wanted to get a refinance. Now, today's rates are it's around 7%. So it's really expensive to own a mortgage. But if in 5 years rates go down to 5.5, then that's the time to refinance. Or if you want, you can always refinance at a later time, and it shouldn't impact the deal too much. Didn't change too much. Now you just have to figure out when's your refinance time and make sure that your investors are involved and they're all on the same page. Again, another breakdown on how you're going to get your money back. If you refinance, what does it mean for the investor? This says right here that the percentage of the investor's initial funds is going to be returned 75% of it. So they're coming back nearly full at the time of refinance and they still own the asset, which is pretty cool. Now, this is the tool. This is the calculator that allows you to look at a deal unbiased and really challenge yourself on whether or not participating in a deal is worth entertaining or not. You don't want to waste a ton of time, a ton of money. You want to get in, put as much effort in as underwriting and scrutinizing the deal as possible upfront before you go invest in millions of dollars of investors' funds. And this is a great way to analyze a deal. This calculator is something that was purchased. I bought this from Michael Blanc. Now, in order to get this, I paid a lot of money. I don't even know how to say the amount without feeling uncomfortable. Paid a lot of money for this calculator. So, and there are legal rules around this calculator. The Michael Blanc wants you to request permission to give it away. That's generally a no. So that's the reason why I'm doing it this way. If you are interested in getting a deal run, I do not mind running a deal with you, running a deal for you for free. And if you want some unbiased critical feedback, I think you found your guy. My information is going to be in the description. So if you want a deal analyzed, you can reach out to me personally, or you can email me and I can review that deal with you on a live. So I appreciate you, and I want to know if you have any questions. So hit me in a chat if you got some questions. In the meantime, I look forward to talking to you guys and creating more content like this for you. Talk to you soon.